This is One Sentence News, a daily podcast featuring 3 news stories with a sentence-long summary and 1 sentence of context apiece. I'm Colin Wright. It's Monday, July 11th, 2022. Let's talk about the news. From Axios, world leaders express shock over assassination of Japan's Shinzo Abe. Former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was shot at a campaign talk last Friday. He was rushed to a hospital, but died from his wounds later that day. Abe's killer, a 41-year-old man who was taken into custody shortly after the shooting, has admitted to the killing, used a homemade firearm consisting of metal barrels and tape attached to a piece of wood and components he bought online, and apparently has been planning the attack for months because his mother went bankrupt after giving money to a religious organization to which Abe had ties. Japan has strict gun laws, so attacks of this kind are incredibly rare. They only had 9 firearm deaths in a country of 125 million people in 2018, compared to 39,740 firearm deaths in the United States that same year. From Reuters, Sri Lanka president to step down, parliamentary speaker says, amid storm of protests. Sri Lanka's government has announced that the president will step down on July 13th following several weeks of protests and demonstrators storming the president's official residence and setting fire to the prime minister's home, among other fairly significant but also seemingly popular moves. The president himself hasn't been seen in a few days, but the country's speaker said that the president informed him he would be stepping down, bowing to the demands of increasingly violent protesters. Those protests and the popular anger that inspired them were allegedly the consequence of corruption and economic mismanagement that led to, among other things, the depletion of the country's foreign reserves, catastrophic inflation, ever-increasing foreign debt, and an inability to pay for fundamentals like fuel, which has led to persistent power outages across the country. And from TechCrunch, European Parliament backs historic reboot to EU's digital rulebook. The European Parliament has approved the Digital Markets Act, or DMA, and the Digital Services Act, or DSA, both of which update the EU's regulations for tech businesses operating within the bloc. These may turn out to be highly consequential pieces of legislation, as they introduce a slew of new competition-related rules and guidelines about how platforms and services must deal with illegal content and products. These new regulations are expected to go into effect in early 2023 and could require, among many other things, that Apple allow customers to sideload non-Apple app stores on their devices, and that big tech companies refrain from sharing data collected from their users. But there are questions about how these rules will be enforced, and some analysts are betting the EU's bureaucracy won't be able to fend off all the litigation and lobbying these wealthy tech companies will be able to throw at them, while also trying to make sure everyone abides by the rules, which could leave these acts practically dead in the water. If you're finding some value in One Sentence News, consider leaving a quick review wherever you get your podcasts and/or sharing the show with a friend. You can find out more about this show or subscribe to the email version at onesentencenews.com. And you can support this and other related projects, like the Let's Know Things and Brain Lenses podcasts, at understandery.com.